from overnight. So joining us now, Brian Brox, a political science professor at Tulane University. And Brian, let's talk about what really motivated voters this go around. What message were they trying to send?
Well, I mean, we're still working through a lot of the exit polling data, but I think what we see here is that in many of the swing states, the same issues were resonating with voters, attracting them to Donald Trump's candidacy. We see a lot of people being upset with the current state of the country, with the economy, in particular with inflation, as well as with America's involvement in foreign conflicts. And sometimes the administration just faces headwinds. And Vice President Harris, being the representative of the administration in this, took the brunt of that anger. So across multiple swing states, voters that were undecided or perhaps in the middle have tended to swing toward President-elect Trump and give him the win here.
Now, many of those battleground states were certainly key in this election. We're still awaiting some of those tallies to come in. But let's talk about the campaign of both candidates here. What did Trump do better than what we saw Harris do to be able to secure those voters in those particular states?
Well, I think they ran two very different campaigns. Vice President Harris ran a traditional, I guess we'd say old school, kind of Trump era thing where you leave mobilization to your allies in the party organization, and you really work at reaching out at swing voters, undecided voters. Where on the other hand, President-elect Trump really focused on messaging, holding large rallies, generating a lot of press attention, and really kind of repeating a message that he was going to change things, which resonated with people that were upset about the state of the country and looking for change.
Now, we'll get into this too in the next 30 minutes, but let's also talk about the House and also the Senate from overnight. Were we seeing those same messaging kind of hitting those particular races when it comes to control of the House, control of the Senate? We're still waiting on the House this morning, but were many voters still relying on those same messages whenever it came to the voting ballots and the ballot boxes for those races?
Well, keep in mind, there were considerably fewer competitive races in both the Senate and the House. So the fact that we've seen a party control flip in the Senate and still a tight race in the House reflects the fact that the nation is fairly evenly divided. Yesterday, the Republicans came out on top, but it's not a massive win. And so what we've seen is that in a number of races, the factors that motivated a lot of folks to vote for President-elect Trump probably caused them also to vote for Republicans on other ends of the ballot. There were a couple of exceptions here. North Carolina governor's race is one. Trump won North Carolina in the Electoral College, but the Democrat won the gubernatorial race. But those are mostly the exceptions. For the most part, people are not really splitting their ticket. So the efforts on the presidential campaign had carryover effects in the other races.
Brian Brox, thank you so much for joining us for this particular moment. We'll catch up with you in just about 30 minutes to, again, talk about the shift of power that we could possibly be seeing when it comes to our nation's capital. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Morgan Darrell, back to you.
Randy, thank you. Several